Matt Miguez has plenty on his mind, and he's ready to share it with the world. It's time to hear the Miguez Mindset.
And we welcome you into the Miguez Mindset here on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette and 104.1 Lake Charles. Matt Miguez here. A great weekend of football coming your way. We're going to talk about the Saints. We're going to talk about LSU, talk about UL, and also just some of the major college football matchups. This is one of those weekends that we all dream about in terms of college football. And we'll start with the Bayou Bengals, the 13th ranked LSU Tigers, welcoming Ole Miss to town, the number 9 team in the country. Very similar teams. Ole Miss 3.5-point favorite in this game. Both teams dealing with injuries to some key players. Obviously, LSU going to be without Harold Perkins for the remainder of the season in a big blow. And then for Ole Miss, Trey Harris, who is a Lafayette product, a little banged up. He's supposed to play, but at what level will he be playing at is going to be the big question. It's also the 100th anniversary of Tiger Stadium this season. They're celebrating it tomorrow night with LED wristbands for fans, alumni from the past 8 decades of LSU football in attendance. Matt Flynn's coming back as a guest captain, as well as Warren Rabb and Steve Emsminger. Just a ton of great a great environment tomorrow night in Death Valley. It's going to be a really good game on the field as well. I think the key for LSU is stopping that Ole Miss passing attack. Jackson Dart has 2,100 yards already on the season in 6 games. You got to slow that down. You got to slow down Trey Harris and Antoine Wells Jr. Also, Caden Prescorn, their tight end, who's a really talented player. Just kind of got to find a way to rattle that passing game a little bit. And then on LSU's offense, feed Caden Durham. He's shown against South Carolina and against South Alabama that he can be a dominant running back. Keep giving him the football. And then in the passing game, find Kyron Lacy, find Aaron Anderson, and let your playmakers make some plays. I'm picking LSU to win this one. I think they have a distinct advantage being at home. I think Ole Miss is a great team, and I think either one of these teams can still end up making the playoff with a loss, but it's going to be a lot harder to do so. Whoever wins this game, I think, puts themselves in a really solid position to have a strong finish to the season and be on the outside opportunity for the college football playoff. The Louisiana Raging Cajuns also at home this weekend. They come in with a 4-1 record as they will welcome App State to Cajun Field. App State hasn't been to Cajun Field since the 2021 Sun Belt Conference Championship game. So this is going to be a fun one, as it typically is. App State losers of their last 2. Meanwhile, Louisiana on a 2-game winning streak, including wins over Wake Forest and Southern Miss. Look, if you're the Cajuns, continue to do what you've done all season long. Strong running game. Let that running game open up the passing game. Make smart decisions with the football. Don't force anything, and just let things kind of develop as they come. If you're App, you got to find a way to get off the snide. You got to find a way to stop giving up so many points. You've been outscored 100-51 in your last 2 losses. You got to find a way to slow that down. You also gave up 66 to Clemson. Granted, it's Clemson. But still, that defense has to find a way to slow down their offenses. 64.5 is the over-under. I think both of these offenses will be able to put up points. But in the end, I think the Cajuns find a way to get a win. 10.5 is a little high in terms of a point spread. I'm looking at it being more of a 7-point game for me personally. But I do think that the Cajuns find a way to pick up a win. And then on Sunday, the Black and Gold, losers of their last 3. They have found themselves in 3rd place in the NFC South. They've got to get back on the winning track. Derek Carr got to miss multiple weeks with his oblique injury. Taysom Hill likely to miss another game, as well as Cesar Ruiz. So it's Spencer Rattler time for the Black and Gold. Can the rookie 5th rounder out of South Carolina, had a really strong career at Oklahoma as well, can he show that he is the quarterback of the future? And really lead this offense against a good Tampa team that might have their minds elsewhere, right? Had to come to New Orleans early to evacuate for Hurricane Milton, brought their families with them, but could be worried about their lives back in Tampa. So, I don't want to say you take advantage of that, but at the same time, can the Saints focus on the task at hand maybe a little bit more than Tampa Bay can, and find a way to play well at home, because you got a short turnaround before you host Denver on Thursday. You're going to play 2 games in 5 days. So can the Saints, kind of build some confidence going into that tough stretch on Sunday against, again, a really good Tampa team that has run the ball very well? Will the Saints be able to slow that down? And then will Spencer Rattler be able to settle in early and find some success in the passing game? That game is at noon on Sunday. The Saints are a 2.5-point favorite. Over-under is 45.5. It has dropped to 41.5, and the Saints are now actually a 3.5-point underdog to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to take the Saints to win it, but I'm going to take the under. I think it's an ugly game, 17-14, 21-17, one of those grind them out type of games. But I do think that the Saints find a way to come out on top. There's 4 key matchups in college football happening tomorrow, in addition to the ones that we've already discussed. Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma, both in the SEC again, or in the same conference again, both in the SEC now. Texas, the number 1 team in the country. Oklahoma 4-1 on the season. When you look at this matchup, over/under of 48.5. Texas is a 14.5-point favorite. Quinn Ewers is supposed to start tomorrow, which is a big get for Texas to welcome him back into the fold. Their offense has been incredible. Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, depleted running back room, but it hasn't looked like it's really mattered. They've had guys step up. Their defense has been solid as well, really controlling opponents. They've only given up, 23 points in their last 3 games. Only held Michigan only got 12 points on them as well. You're talking 35 points in 5 games against opponents. Now, granted, some of those opponents are Colorado State, ULM, and UTSA, but I don't care who you're playing. If you're holding them to 7 points a game, you're doing something right. And Jaden Blue has been a strong running back for the Longhorns so far this season. The junior out of Houston, 238 yards and 4 touchdowns. Arch Manning looked incredible in his 2 starts, up to 900 yards and 9 touchdowns on the season now. But again, Quinn Ewers returns and is going to look to kind of make a statement here early after his injury against a hated rival in Oklahoma. These 2 teams hate each other. And it's going to be a really fun game over at the Cotton Bowl. That one is at 2:30 tomorrow on ABC. Also at 2:30 on CBS, Penn State and USC. Penn State, the number 4 team in the country with a 5-0 record. They're a 3.5-point favorite against the Trojans, who's been solid. They're 3-2 after a tough loss to Minnesota last week. They also lost by 3 to Michigan, but they got that 27-20 win to open the season over LSU. Miller Moss has looked phenomenal. Looked really good against Wisconsin as well. And then Penn State has been relying on good old Nicholas Singleton, 408 yards so far on the season with 3 touchdowns. Drew Aller has been really impressive with his 1,100 yards passing. And this game is in Los Angeles. Does the travel kind of affect Penn State a little bit? A cross-country road trip for a conference game is not something that they're used to. So, how does that look tomorrow afternoon in LA? Look, I'm going to take Penn State, but I don't think it's going to be a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination. According to ESPN Analytics, USC has actually got a 52% chance of winning. I still like the Nittany Lions. I think they're tested. I think they're a really strong offensive team. Nicholas Singleton's going to have a big night against USC's defense, and I take the Nittany Lions to win that one. A night game, Kansas State and Colorado, is going to be a really fun game as well. Kansas State is a 3.5-point favorite on the road in Boulder. Travis Hunter, Shadur Sanders really has Colorado clicking right now with a 4-1 overall record after a pretty rough start. Nearly lost to North Dakota State. Nearly lost to Nebraska 28-10. And then you had that slip up against Baylor where you had to survive with that last second Hail Mary and then win it in overtime. But they beat Colorado State 28-9. They beat UCF 48-21 when they were underdogs in that game. This one's going to be a lot of fun. Colorado 4th in the Big 12. Kansas State is 6th in the Big 12. Kansas State's got some really big wins this year as well. Oklahoma State, Arizona, Tulane, but then they were blown out on the road at BYU 38-9. BYU 5-0 as well. to open the season. Look, I think that this is a game where it's kind of a toss-up, right? I'm not sure who's going to win this game. What version of Kansas State shows up, and what version of Colorado's offense shows up. If Colorado's high-powered, electric, putting 38, 40 points on the board, I think Colorado wins the game. But if it's one of those performances where, maybe they struggle to score 25, 26, I think Kansas State could take advantage of that and pick up a win there. And then the game that everybody's talking about, how about Ohio State and Oregon? 2-0. They're both 5-0, 2-0 in the Big Ten. Number 2 Ohio State, number 3 Oregon in the Zoo in Eugene. It's going to be a electric atmosphere. Going to be a great crowd as well. College game day there tomorrow. Ohio State, a 3-point favorite in this game with an over/under of 40 or 54.5. Look, both of these teams have played some tough competition already. Oregon playing Boise State, UCLA and Michigan State, also Oregon State as well. And both of these teams have also, I say both of these teams. Oregon played Idaho to open the season, and it was a 10-point win for Oregon. So there was a slow start for the Ducks, but they've really settled in over the last 3 games. And meanwhile, Ohio State has just kind of obliterated everybody that they've played. They beat Akron 52-6, Western Michigan 56-0, Marshall 49-14, Michigan State 38-17. That's their only common opponent so far. And then they beat Iowa 35-7. Will Howard having an incredible season after transferring in from Kansas State. Quinshon Judkins, the transfer running back from Ole Miss, 468 yards and 5 touchdowns already as a Buckeye. And the freshman receiver Jeremiah Smith, 23 catches, 453 yards, and 6 touchdowns. On the other side, Dylan Gabriel, a really strong start, Heisman favorite at the beginning of the season. He's kind of slipped out of that role, but still 1,500 passing yards, 11 touchdowns. Jordan James, 552 yards on the ground. And then Tez Johnson, a really strong receiver, the transfer from North Carolina, 395 yards and 5 touchdowns in that game. Or so far on the season, I should say. It's going to be a really fun matchup under the lights on NBC. Number 2 versus number 3. Major playoff implications early on. These are the games. It's crazy to think about that this is a conference game now, and this is a matchup that we could see each and every year under this new college football realignment landscape. Should be a great weekend of college football. We'll be back next week to recap all of it. Please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at ESPN Southwest Louisiana. Follow us on social media at ESPN_SWLA as well. This has been another edition of the Miguez Mindset here on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette and 104.1 Lake Charles.